Okay, stand by. We're sitting down. About 2 minutes to live. 2 minutes to live. All right, and we're going to go live.
All right, welcome to the Oscoda Township regular board meeting for May 13, 2019. We've already started our meeting, done the roll call, pledge of allegiance, and it's just now come out of closed session. For agenda additions, I have 2 items. One is under the supervisor report for item C. And this is dealing with a letter to Alcona County Commissioners requesting their support in researching and possibly providing EMS service to Oscoda Township. And then the other one would be for, under other, number 9, regarding the treasurer's seasonal employee. Do we have any others? All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Ms. McGuire. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's passed. Next, we go into the public hearing for relinquishment of jurisdiction. I make a motion to do so.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, we are now in the public hearing. This is regarding Resolution 2019-16.
All right, so we are going to go into this further later on down the agenda. So this public hearing is to begin the process, the obligation to follow all statutory road relinquishment procedures. And the aforementioned Resolution 2019-16 is dealing with parcel number 063-009-300-001-00. And this is approximately 40 acres off of Loud Drive that we are going to establish a public hearing for the next meeting, which is June 10th of the Township Board.
Board members have any comments? Any comments from the public regarding the subject? All right, any comments back to the board? Anybody have questions, comments?
This is, just for clarity, this is to turn this 40 acres back to the state, correct?
Yes.
All right, then I make a motion, we come out of our public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes. We now enter our public comment period. For this first one, a card must be filled out and turned in to the superintendent. There's a 4-minute time limit, and when you come to the podium, please introduce yourself. Do we have any cards?
We have Richard Miller about survey boundary issues.
Yes, please.
I am the retired land surveyor that created the court-approved survey documentation on the 66-foot wide section line road. And the abutting property owners are entitled to 1/2 that total width, 33 feet each in width, the total extension of their side lot line property lines. And in that survey that I conducted, the court identified my survey as the recognized correct survey. My concern is that it appears like nothing has actually taken place. The biggest issue is the violation of the Bowden family, because they created an obstruction in that section line right of way. The biggest problem was they deposited all their debris when they cleared enough right of way to enable them to easily bring their wrecked equipment, junk, debris, everything. And what I am offering to the board members, and it's at no cost to the township, they need to physically see the magnitude of that position. At one point in time, they had a 9-foot diameter tire that was placed on the township side, the north side, to get it off of their property right away on the south side of their property. And the magnitude has even worsened since that court order was provided that my survey would be the recognized correct disposition of the property. And one of the specific words is that no obstructions would be permitted in that section line road. And I would gladly invite any member. I'll take them out there and show them everything that physically exists and the additional junk, excuse the expression, that they put since that order. It is my conviction, with my 58 years of practicing my profession, which I absolutely loved, and the only reason I literally retired was because I have a titanium right hip. I have to wear a back brace because I can't bend down, and my left knee is driving me nuts so bad that if I get down on my hands and knees, I can't get back up. So my physical limitations are a bit of a problem for me. But my life conviction with my survey work is I will defend what has been ordered by a court until I stop breathing. So I would gladly invite any board member to take them out there and show them physically what has been created since that court order. They have now applied to any of the issues on the earlier court order. And like I say, it won't cost you anything because I am absolutely committed to what I've been ordered by a circuit court. I love what I did, but I can't do it anymore because of physical issues. So anybody can contact me and we will go out and you can see for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Any other cards?
We do have Rich Castle from Consumers at the Tawas Field Office opening.
Good evening, Rich Castle, Community Affairs Manager for Consumers Energy. Just take a few minutes here to let you guys know that last Monday, May 6th, we did open the Tawas Field Office, so we are officially up and running in Tawas. We're currently working on the indoor parking area, so that is our biggest construction project currently going on. We will open up the permanent field office, our permanent building, probably second quarter of 2020. Right now we're in a temporary building, which is adequate for the time being, but we needed to make sure that we could get all of our equipment indoors and get a storeroom constructed, and so that's what we're trying to do currently. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is Consumers Energy is hosting the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission Recreation Conference. That's going to be held June 3rd through the 6th. We're going to be hosting that in Tawas, but we will be focusing most of that entire conference up here on the Oscoda River as part of our hydro facilities. So we will be showcasing Foot site as well as some of our recreation sites at Foot Dam and at Cook Dam as well. What that conference means is we have about 50 individuals from across the country coming here to Tawas and Oscoda to look at our facilities. Being in my old position in hydro for the last 9 years, I was able to attend this similar conference at other parts of the country, and it's a good opportunity for individuals to get a good understanding of how it is to work with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We get to showcase our facilities, but also use that as a comparison to other facilities. And so the sites that Oscoda Township has under lease from Consumers will be part of the focus of this recreation site, and I wanted you guys to be aware of that. So that's all I have for this evening, nice and quick, but if you have any questions, I'm here. Otherwise, appreciate your time this evening.
Where is this, a new facility in Tawas?
So the new facility is on Lincoln Road, out by Ulrich Road, out by the Iosco County Airport, so just on the north side of East Tawas.
So you gotta get off 23
Yes,
to see
correct.
it? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And the temporary building that you're using is relocatable that you've moved in there?
Yeah, it's a work trailer. I would say it's probably one of the better ones that I've worked out of, but it is a work trailer and it's very sufficient. There's offices in there for staff, kitchen, etc. So very, very workable for us for the next, say 8 to 12 months. So.
Thank you.
And how much equipment have you moved, did you say?
We have our work trucks. We have some Connex boxes that host a lot of our material. We're still trying to get some of our equipment over from West Branch. We had to procure some other equipment from other parts of the state to be able to staff this. I mean, this is separate from West Branch, so we basically have to have all of our own equipment, and so we're still in the process of getting that all to Tawas. But for the most part, we are in operation. We have enough equipment to go into operation. If something major storm-wise were to happen, I mean, we may be a little vulnerable at this point, but that being said, we're in the process of getting everything in a position where Tawas is on its own and can operate without much of assistance from any of the other service centers. So things are progressing very, very well.
So the downwire process should be improving.
That's the hope, and that's really one of the main reasons why we've opened this facility. So that is our goal here, is that we should be able to increase our reliability, not only for Iosco County, but also Alcona and parts of Aranac. So.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Do we have any other cards?
No.
Okay, on the consent agenda. Any comments regarding the meeting minutes of April 22nd and April 25th?
I have a comment, that as I was handing out the draft closed session minutes, I noticed I have the 23rd on those. So I'll need to change those to reflect the 22nd.
Any comments regarding the payment of bills of $210,954.78? Any comments regarding payment of bills for the DDA? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings? Yes. Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Gasky?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Subcommittee reports and project updates. The first is the steering committee update.
All right, so at the 425 session, we discussed in great length the scenario for outdoor recreation, connecting the natural resources to the citizens, and we are coming up with a process to be able to get some data behind the board's thoughts associated with that, and how to move forward. The next strategic session is going to be held this Thursday, the 16th at 1:30 here in the library.
And recap of the Township Board work session for May 10th.
All right, so we spent a lot of time on both the water and the sewer ordinances. We then spent about 2.5 hours going over the incorporated changes into the water and sewer ordinances since, and the board is going to hopefully be seeing the draft ordinances in either of the meetings in June.
And root cause analysis for the RAB audio.
Yeah, this should be, don't see him here. Let's see, there he is, he's coming in now. Just go ahead and take the podium there, thank you.
Hello. There is a request for a root cause analysis for the audio issues that we had, and I would like to discuss that with the board this evening. I don't know how much of the information has been disseminated to you, but after looking through and checking everything out, it would appear as though it was well, start at the beginning. Everything was plugged in, and everything was honed in, and all the audio was set. And then, as the Pledge of Allegiance started, someone kicked the power plug out of the audio, out of the mixer board. Now, if we, I mean, there's a bunch of things we've gone over to look at how we can resolve that, but basically, that's exactly what happened. And when the power is lost from the audio board, it loses its programming completely. The only way to keep it is to turn it off with the switch. And so we have, at the behest of one of the board members, we've gone through and set some checklists so that we can make sure that that doesn't happen again. We've also looked at purchasing additional hardware in the form of a UPS, or uninterrupted power supply. It's basically a battery backup that would go in the rack that would power the unit for probably 10 to 15 minutes, giving us a little bit of leeway if something like that should happen again. Any questions? None at all?
Sounds good. Thank you very much for that.
As I beat the microphone around. All right, well, have a great evening, everyone.
Where are you getting reports that people are unhappy with the sound?
Oh, from the
Board
sound?
members or the general public?
This was at the RAB meeting.
Oh,
This was the RAD meeting,
okay.
yeah. And an overwhelming majority of the notifications we've had of bad audio have been from the board and from the people that we have watching the video for us and watching the live stream. They'll call us up or send us an email after the meetings. Hey, the audio is great. Oh, it was a little fuzzy here. And we go through and check those things.
Okay.
And on a second note, we have recovered a majority of the audio for that RAB meeting, and we should be able to marry those together and have, because we had to pull it from different spaces. Some of the audio files were corrupted. They will be, well, we will recover them as much as possible with the abilities that we have, and then we will have a finished product for you shortly. So we do apologize for that. It is, we'd like to point out that we did have, we do an exceptional job for the most part with the ability, with the people that we have. And we were pretty upset that this happened to us, especially on such an important meeting. And we'd like to extend our apologies to the board, and that we will be taking measures to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions now? All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Some of you may have already seen that our F41 streetlight project has started. That's coming along rather quickly now. And next is a recap for the RAB and upcoming PFAS Town Hall.
We missed number 4, the Road and Sidewalk Committee. That
Oh.
was 5-3.
Yes.
May 3rd, that was Friday, May 3rd. We explained the special assessment process to several citizens that were submitting formal requests for road improvement. The Road and Sidewalk Committee also explained to the citizens the 1.75 mil road and sidewalk millage that would generate the $526,000 per year on the August 6th ballot. And we are awaiting formal quotes from the Iosco County Road Commission, and we have scheduled the next Road and Sidewalk Committee meeting for Monday, June 10th at 9 a.m. here at the library, with the hopes that the Road Commissioner, Bruce Boland, will be able to come and explain some of those quotes and have the citizens be able to also engage the Road Commissioner.
And you might remember that I had promised the people, basically the people represented 3 street projects, I believe. And I told them, you need to go to the township or the county road commission meeting, and I was able to get that for them. In fact, right now, there's 2 Mondays in a row. Usually it's every other Monday, but they met this morning at 10 o'clock and next Monday at 10 o'clock. Some scheduling reason that I don't need to know about. So they know that, and I don't know if they attended or not. So.
All right, so recap of the RAB and the upcoming PFAS Town Hall.
All right, so at the 424 RAB, Secretary Henderson, Secretary of the Air Force Henderson, came and basically gave an outline of realistic expectations as far as the time frame, as far as when we can continue to see significant improvement or significant change to the remediation process. Unfortunately, that was explained to us. It could be another 4 years till we see significant increases to those remediation efforts. They have a lot more data to obtain and assess. I don't know if anybody wanted to say anything else about that.
That's very true, and I know that there were a number of people from the community who responded to that message with the concern that it's already been quite a long time, and more patience and more time was not something that I think a lot of people in the community were happy to give. But the meeting was at least polite. It was civil. And we do have it memorialized on video, which is the reason why we had the discussion earlier about the from McTV. There were some issues that night, but I think they're going to recover enough of it that we have it memorialized on video. So the RAB meeting that followed was reasonably productive. There was one gentleman at the very end who I thought gave a tremendously good presentation. He worked for the state, and I don't know where they've been keeping him. I'd never seen him before, but he was incredibly educated, knowledgeable on the subject of our area, and knew history of conversations and testing that has never been brought to light before. I was encouraged by that. I think that part of the video is well worth going back and watching if you are so inclined. That's it.
Just a quick addition. I don't know if the board knows this or the audience, but Oscoda and PFAS and Van Etten Creek was on the first page of the Detroit Free Press Sunday yesterday. So
I did.
pretty good article, pretty long article.
It was.
Not all about Oscoda, but the problem in general around Michigan.
Yeah, there's been a number of articles, and unfortunately, some articles are even trying to portray that Michigan has the abundance of all these PFAS sites, and it isn't necessarily correct in that really we're just the one with the most amount of attention right now. It doesn't mean that there isn't PFAS anywhere else. So.
All right, Oscoda Community Center Spring Fling.
All right, before we move on to that, I just wanted to let everybody know that the upcoming PFAS Town Hall is the 22nd, next Thursday, at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. The open house is from 4 to 5:30, and the community meeting is from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. The Oscoda Community Center Spring Fling 2019 is this Saturday, the 18th, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Finally, the 2018 Audit Exit Conference has been scheduled for this Thursday, the 16th at 10 a.m. And if everything goes to plan, the 2018 audit will be presented to the Township Board at the June 10th meeting, the next meeting.
All right, on to the supervisor's report. First one is the update for the investigation concerning the purchase of the timesheet software. Everything is outlined in the packet, which is online. What it comes down to is that this looks like this was an oversight, and the recommendations from it are that we revise our purchasing policy to include several more details for clarity of both staff and board members, and implement the process for implement process improvements for regular budget updates, which we've actually already started that with a new report that Ms. McGuire is providing for us, and implement a process that incoming invoices are verified within days of receipt to determine if they are valid expenses. Is there any comments regarding that?
I just wanted to give you another update on that. We started stamping when we receive the invoices from the department heads, so that we know, like, the time lapse, that, we get it, it's a bill that we get now that was dated back to December, that type of thing, so we can take it up with that individual department head. And we've also started scanning all the invoices into accounts payable, and the ones that we are approving tonight and previous for the prepaids have all been scanned and entered. If you wanted to take a look at any of those invoices, they're there.
Nice. Thank you.
All right, so in relation to that, I make a motion that we approve the $11,170 to be paid for the BS&A invoices relating to the timesheet software implementation.
Support.
I have one question
Yes.
about that. That invoice was from December 5th of last year. Will there be a late fee on that? Do you know?
I don't think there's a late fee. for
Not
that.
to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion is passed. On to agenda addition regarding the Alcona County EMS. They have requested that we provide a letter to them showing that we are interested in seeking the viability of them providing EMS service to us. They want to make sure their constituents know that this is not Alcona County trying to ask it of us. And they want to make sure that, and we'll have it in the letter, that the services are to be separated so that their constituents are aware that if this does happen, it will not have a negative impact on the service they already provide to their residents. And so just to clarify that there will be a separation there in the services. And that hopefully that will satisfy any concerns their residents have. I think we all know in the past, Oscoda's kind of gotten a lot of surrounding communities that are always worried that we're going to take over something, and that's not something that we can or I don't think that we really want to do. But I do think we need to definitely look further into providing better EMS service to our residents. I've not received any feedback, again, from our county regarding any improvements or any changes they've made to their service. The Alcona EMS service provided us with their times, and none of their 911 calls were over 30 minutes. That's for 2 units in a county that's geographically larger than ours and has a more difficult road system than ours. So I know that our county could do better with their service, but so far I've had no feedback. I've made a phone call today, one of the commissioners, and there's been no further action on their part that I know of. So what I'm asking for is the board to approve the supervisor to draft and sign a letter to send to Alcona commissioners in support of researching and possibly providing EMS service to Oscoda Township.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion is passed. All right, then on to the superintendent report. Proposal from Rowe Engineering associated with Old Orchard Park electrical upgrades.
All right, as part of the township's 2019 capital improvement plan, there were planned electrical upgrades to Old Orchard Park. This has to do with being able to replace the electrical pedestals as well as providing 50 amp service to the west end of the park. The Rowe Professional Services Company has submitted a $4,870 proposal to provide engineering services associated with upgrading electrical service to 50 amp, the west end of the park. And this would be paid out of the Old Orchard Park Capital Improvement Fund 218 as 801 or professional fees. This proposal requires the township board approval.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'd move that we go ahead with the Oscoda Old Orchard Park electrical upgrades as explained by Rowe Engineering.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Increase 2019 appropriations for Old Orchard Park Capital Improvement Fund.
All right, so I'm happy to report the department heads are very pleased with the services provided by Aton Tree and Debris. Your packet contains an invoice detailing all the tree service work performed at Old Orchard Park. I'll remind the board that more services are still being rendered at the Beach Park, Cemetery, and Ken Ratliff Memorial Park. We have not performed tree trimming and removal to this magnitude in quite some time. So a more routine type of program is going to reduce the amount of work necessary for large projects like this. So the 2019 appropriations for OOP Capital Improvement Fund 218 will likely need to be addressed once again after the electrical upgrade project costs are determined. So Rowe is going to be putting together a packet to be able to come out to bid, but you know, the $45,000 placeholder as far as the what was put in the capital improvement plan, obviously that's from years ago, and we will be evaluating that once we get those proposals back to provide that 50 amp service.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the increased 2019 appropriations for Old Orchard Park Capital Improvement Fund 218 up to $93,900 from the original $33,000.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Formal release of original $45,000 offer for the 40.7 acres on Loud Drive.
All right, so due to the unforeseen circumstances, the original $45,000 offer for the 40.7 acres on Loud Drive must be withdrawn. It requires township board approval.
I'll make the motion that we withdraw approve the withdrawal of the 45,000 and note that the deposit was never made, so it does not need to be refunded.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Any comments? Roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. The $47,000 backup offer for the same parcel.
All right. So the board has previously accepted the $47,000 as a backup offer to the original $45,000 offer. Your packet contains the previously accepted purchase agreement, as well as a string of emails from the buyer and the township supervisor. Formal action from the township board must be taken for the $47,000 offer to be accepted as the current offer instead of the backup offer.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I would move to accept the backup offer on 40.7 acres on Loud Drive in the amount of $47,000.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. $46,500 backup offer for the same parcel of land.
Okay. So this is a popular piece of property. The township board needs to consider the establishment of a backup offer for the 40.7 acres on Loud Drive. Your packet contains a purchase agreement dated the 30th of April 2019 from a potential buyer offering $46,500. Township board approval is required to establish a backup offer on this property.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the backup offer to the 40.7 acres for 46,500.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion is passed. An $81,500 offer for a 5145 North US 23 property.
All right. So the aforementioned property, your packet contains a purchase agreement dated the 1st of May 2019 from a potential buyer offering the $81,500 for the property listed at 5145 North US 23. I'd like to bring it to the board's attention. The buyer is requesting the township to complete a boundary staked survey. Township board approval is required to accept, reject, or counter the offer contained within the purchase agreement.
Any comments?
I think the public should know that this is land next to Dollar General in North US 23. So,
I make a motion, we accept the offer for $81,500 for 5145 North US 23, with the exception that we do not provide the boundary stake survey.
Support.
However, we are willing to provide any documents that we have on file at the Township Hall regarding plating and survey. Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. DPW paving request.
All right, so the DPW paving request was listed in the 2019 capital improvement plan for $25,000. That $25,000 was an estimate from several years ago. All the quotes came back higher than that amount. Your packet contains a memo from the DPW supervisor with a recommendation to award the paving project to Everett Goodrich Trucking and Asphalt Paving in the amount not to exceed $27,740. The memo details the process for how 3 quotes were obtained, and the packet also contains the other quotes as well as the drawings provided to the vendors to quote the job. This requires Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the paving project at the DPW site in an amount not to exceed $27,740 to Everett Goodrich Trucking and Asphalt Paving.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Increase 2019 appropriations for Fund 265 Township Hall grounds.
All right, so based on the previous Township Board action items, requesting the board to increase 2019 general fund appropriations in cost centers of the general fund. 101-265 is the Township Hall and grounds, and 101-299 is the unallocated. The total of those for 101-265 is $27,740, and for 101-299 is $11,170. Those increases for 2019 total general fund appropriations would go up $38,910 up to $3,247,988. Any increase to 2019 appropriations requires Township Board approval.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the 2019 general fund appropriations from $38,910 to $3,247,998, or $988, sorry.
Support. Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. F&VO proposal for developing the manuals for the sewer lagoon site.
So the most recent improvements made to the lagoon site required the submission of a discharge management plan as well as an operations and maintenance manual to be submitted to the MDEQ, now EGLE. Your packet contains a $7,900 proposal from F&V to create the DMP, the discharge management plan, and the operations and maintenance manual to be submitted to EGLE. Your packet also contains email communications with EGLE as well as the professional services, quote dated 5/1/14 for the wastewater treatment lagoon systems improvements. This proposal requires Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Well, I have a question. This is supposed to be in on the 31st of this month?
No, we have requested extensions, and they have been agreeable. EGLE has been agreeable to be able to provide those extensions.
And the extension is going to be 2 months,
Yes.
July 31st?
Get that for you.
calls for in their schedule.
Calls for asking for that. Did we get that, though?
July 31st.
Okay, 2 months. Okay. One of the reasons I'm asking is because some of the support material, I don't know whether it came from state documentation or F&V, but it talks about, every time they want to mention May 31, it's in bold print, repeatedly, like, we mean business, you know, so we're free of that.
Yeah, and that's why we had request those extensions.
Yeah.
They're fairly amiable to extensions in our meetings that we've had with Daigle, and obviously through their dealings with the Air Force, they've been too amenable with extensions.
You
another
can
matter.
accomplish this in 2.5 months? Okay.
Is this an update or a new manual?
This is a manual that should have been created back when these were completed.
So it's
We
gonna be a
submitted
new-
everything upon the completion of the lagoon project. We're now getting comments back on this project.
Well,
And to be clear, it was not FBOP who did this. It was Spicer who had done that project.
Or was it MDEQ being a little tardy in telling us, whoops, you're missing something? Did they do that in a timely manner, or had they just hit us with that in the last few weeks? Okay. And again, for the audience, you're going to hear us talk about Eagle. It's the new moniker, new name for MDEQ. What's the first E?
Environment.
Environment, GL, Great Lakes, E, Energy. So,
It's Department of.
Department of, yes.
Daigle.
Okay. Sounds like an ornithological thing, you know, birds or.
All right, do we have a motion? Calling for a motion.
I'll move to approve the proposal from F&V Operations to create a discharge management plan and an operations and maintenance manual for the lagoon site in an amount not to exceed $7,900.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Gasky. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. F&V proposals for PFAS investigation of the sanitary sewer system.
All right, so F&V has submitted a proposal to evaluate PFAS within the township's wastewater treatment plant as an additional service under the existing operations and maintenance agreement. The entirety of the cost for the PFAS evaluation of the township's wastewater treatment plant is not known at this time, but I'm requesting the township board to approve an amount not to exceed $46,900 at this time, to be paid out of the sewer fund 590, 827 out of regulatory fees. In addition, if additional sampling locations are identified during the development of the monitoring plan, F&V will work with the township to amend this proposal. Your packet contains communication from the Michigan Department, EGLE, dated 4/29/19, as well as an email communications with EGLE granting extensions on the required timeframes.
Any comments?
This is in response to a report from Eagle on our level of PFAS effluent, which was above the allowable rate, correct?
Correct. In putting together our plan to narrow down the source of that PFAS so we can reduce it significantly or even eliminate it. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve F&V operations proposal to evaluate the PFAS within the township wastewater treatment plant in an amount not to exceed $46,900.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Fire Department purchase for the Jaws of Life.
All right. The amount of $25,000 is listed on the 2019 capital improvements plan to replace the Jaws of Life unit for the fire department. Again, this was an estimate from a few years back. Your packet contains a narrative from the fire chief on the process used to replace the Jaws of Life unit, as well as the 3 quotes obtained. The fire chief is recommending the township board approve $40,000 to Apollo Fire Equipment Company to purchase the Hearst Jaws of Life unit to be paid out of the Fire Department Equipment Fund 206.
Comments?
In talking with a member of the fire department, just it was kind of enlightening to me anyway. Maybe there other board members are totally familiar with this. The new Jaws of Life is battery operated on. Before they were hydraulic. We had 2 on hand at all times, but the ones that we have now are hydraulic and need cords and power sources and so forth. And at least one of them dates back to the early 90s, base closure, and they were kind of old and beat up at that time. So this is quite an improvement. They're quite enthusiastic about it, but it sounds like it would be a little more versatile, you know. No cords, no power sources. The battery is right encased in it, so.
And they blind demoed, they brought them up, and that Hearst unit has the most balance and is the lightest to be able to operate. And so that's what they wanted them to be able to evaluate, not based on price or brand. They just want to be able to use them.
And this is, again, is an article of fire department equipment that comes from the special millage for equipment. So, am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a note, we discussed on Friday that this was not the lowest price for the Jaws, but this particular brand was most preferred by the firefighters themselves for using. I think he said it was lighter and easier to use, and having a brand new set of Jaws of Life instead of an old hand-me-down they've had for 30 years is going to be a big improvement for them. So I think this is a good move.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we pay $40,000 to Apollo Fire Equipment Company to purchase the Hearst Jaws of Life unit.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Fire Department UTV lights.
All right, the fire department is requesting the ATV project total to be increased by $479.43 up to project total of $18,843. Again, this is to be paid out of Fire Department Equipment Fund to accommodate the installation of emergency lights on the recently purchased ATV. Your packet contains the string of emails from the fire chief, as well as the cost detail of the emergency lights. This purchase requires township board approval.
Comments? There a motion?
Yeah, I move that we apply the additional $479.43 to the ATV project to accomplish lighting and decals.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. MDEQ or EGLE access agreement to Ken Ratliff Memorial Park.
All right, the township has provided Eggle with revised access agreements for Ken Ratliff Memorial Park. This will allow them to mount video cameras in the park to monitor foam events on Venetton Lake. Upon their approval or confirmation, requesting the township board to authorize Supervisor Weed to sign the access agreement.
Comments?
Do we know what they're going to mount the video cameras to?
We do not.
It's gonna be a chip where they come out and take the chip out, or is it gonna go electrical right down to them?
We don't know. We're letting them decide
Not
that.
that either.
They need to decide where the best placement is, what the best equipment to use is.
Yeah, there's no internet down there, so. we might-
So again,
Unless they're gonna use
that'd be a
cellular
chip.
connection, I don't know what they're gonna do. Okay.
I would just point out that you revised the wording in the first sentence of the document.
Yes.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we authorize Supervisor Weed to sign the access agreement with the changes outlined by Mr. Palmer.
Is there support?
Support?
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. POLC contract.
All right, so I am happy to report that the POLC and the township are putting the contract in front of you. So basically, this would be a 3-year contract covering 2019, 2020, and 2021. We have gone over several of the changes associated with this, with the contract going from previously POAM to POLC. We were able to put together the updated articles in here, and this was the product of the bargaining committee comprised of 3 of the board members and myself, as well as the POLC representation. Some of the highlights out of here that are incorporated into the 3-year agreement would be a 2% increase per year in wages, as well as retro pay back to 1/1 of 2019. There have also been changes in some of the provisions associated with uniform allowance. There are the flexibility as far as to be able to use the money towards the purchase of new uniforms, as well as the way that the holiday pay is paid out. With that, I guess the agreement would be to have Supervisor Weed and Township Clerk, Mr. Nordine, authorized to be able to sign this 3-year agreement with POLC.
Comments?
Has that been signed by PLC already?
It has not been signed, it has been ratified by vote.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the PLC contract as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Changes to the Township Employee Handbook.
All right, so Clerk Nordine and I, based on the discussion from the work session last Friday, and then discussions afterwards, he has presented the changes to the affected sections of the employee handbook. And so what you have there is there's really only 2 pages of it affected. The first page, page 8, details that DPW employees would receive $650 per year in uniform allowance. That is up from the previous annual amount of $550 per year. The page 10, which you see highlighted in blue there, outlines the changes to the paid leave days for permanent part-time employees, as well as the transition from a permanent part-time employee to full-time status with the township.
Any comments?
I just had one question on this transition from permanent part-time to full-time part-time on the vacation. I couldn't quite get my head around this calculation for an employee that would have 10 years of service, which would put them at 15 days vacation. And then based on the calculation, the example that's being used for a date of April 1st, and you calculate, that would give them 4 vacation days. Would that be for that entire year?
It would then be on the anniversary date. So how the vacation is re-upped every year is based on the anniversary date of employment.
So this is based on the anniversary date of April 1st. So at April 1st, they would have 4 vacation days?
For the remainder of the year after the 6 months of the successful completion of the probationary period, between those 6 months and the anniversary day, they would be prorated the 4 days, and then after that, they would be eligible for the 15 days after that, based on previous employment status with the township.
I guess I'm not clear. We're talking about an employee that's been here for 10 years. They go from part-time, and I understand the part-time employees don't have vacation time, but they do have personal days, I believe up to 8 personal days. So that's just for specification, so 8 vacation days. So now they go to full-time, and they would only have 4 vacation days?
For the 6 months after they've successfully completed the probationary status to their anniversary date. At that point, it would be re-upped.
So after their anniversary date, they would then have what?
15 days.
15 days? So where does the 4 days come in?
That's
From
what's
January to April?
Yeah, that's available from the 6 months after they complete the probationary period until their anniversary date.
So in this scenario, the employee would transition on April 1st. There would be a 6-month probationary period, which would then take them to October 1st. And from October 1st to April 1st of the following year, they would have 4 vacation days to operate with, at which time it re-ups to 15 on their anniversary date of the following year.
I would not be happy with that if I were an employee that had been here for 10 years on a part-time basis. And then January 1st, I become a full-time employee and I only have 4 days vacation then after that until the following year in April.
Well, they used to have to wait over a year to get the first week.
This is a
That's actually, it was in almost 2 years at that point.
substantial change from our current policy.
This is a
When you-
drastic improvement.
When you factor in personal time, vacation time, wages.
This is an improvement over,
This is a drastic improvement from the
Drastic.
current process.
okay.
You're not buying it, are you?
Somehow that just doesn't seem fair to me. First of all, I don't understand if you have an employee that's been here for 10 years, why you need a probationary period.
I agree.
That's number one. Number two is they've obviously been a good employee that you've had for 10 years. Now their workload has increased to where you want to make them a full-time employee, and then you want to take their vacation time away. I can't understand that thinking.
So, couple facets there. As far as the probationary period, when we went from part-time to full-time, permanent part-time to full-time status, sat down with a list of expectations as far as the changes and the expectations in the first 6 months going from that part-time to full-time, and evaluate those with the employees. So that was the incorporation of the probationary period. As far as the historical practice from going from permanent part-time to full-time status, the previous employment, the years of employment were not factored in to that transition from permanent part-time to full-time. It was as if the township hired that employee with 0 years of service to the township, being that they would start over, and they would have to wait an entire year to receive 5 days, and they started at that 5 days. And after 5 years, it would go to the 10 days. Or I'm sorry, however the schedule goes. It was previous historically that no previous township years of service were factored into that transition.
Well, under that scenario, I can see where this is an improvement. I'm not sure it's even, I mean, you have a policy that's terrible, and then you upgrade it to a bad policy. I don't, somehow that's a little.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, I would have to think about this a little more than what we're just discussing here. Somehow, prior to the person being a full part-time, after 10 years, they would have 8 personal days they'd be able to use. So those would be like,
I don't mean to cut you off. It'd actually be 9
okay.
to strengthen your
No,
case.
okay. Well, that
After
helps.
5
That
years, it
helps
goes
my
to 9.
argument
It
then,
does,
because
yeah. Make
now
sure
they
you-
would be entitled to, say, 9 vacation days, and we're transitioning them to full-time. Could they carry over part of those days plus the 4 vacation days?
Eliminate the 4 vacation days and give them the 9 days and their probationary period, and after that, they go to 15.
That'd
Just
be,
carry the 9 days over, it's that simple.
yeah.
Yep.
That would seem to me to be a fair proposition in terms of vacation time. Because it
Because they're here for almost 10 years, they're going on 10 years, they're not gonna walk away from,
And this,
they might walk for 4 days, but they won't walk for 9.
to Mr. Shaver, to our way of thinking, at least, I didn't write this portion, but the examples were just included as a way to help facilitate the implementation of this process in the future. So this is just a possible scenario that we're.
a bad scenario.
Sure, but we're talking hypotheticals here about talking about would they walk, would they not? This is just a dreamt up scenario of 10 years of service and all that. So I just want to make that.
Sure, yeah, I understand,
Sure.
but if you're gonna use that scenario, then you use that scenario all the way through, that you take an employee that's been here 10 years. First of all, I don't understand why you have a probationary period. Secondly, they had 9 vacation days while they were on part-time. Why wouldn't they have, at least going forward, have
Same amount.
at least part of that plus
Well,
4 days?
And then a full-time person has 3 personal days also on top of the vacation. So those come into play as well in talking equity. Just so that we're looking at all aspects of this.
Okay,
I can see the probationary period if you're going from one job to a wholly different department or that type of thing to have a probationary period, because maybe, you know, it's too overwhelming, or, you know, that gives them time to get their feet wet if they can handle it or not. I don't see a problem with a probationary period.
Well, but I don't understand that. I mean, the probationary period is there for us to determine whether or not the person is able to do the job.
Correct.
Your point is it's a new job. What I don't understand is why we would transfer that person into a new job we weren't sure they could handle after they've already been with us for 10 years. It seems like that I don't get that.
Well, let's
It seems
say
like it'd be
they're,
on the
well, I have a perfect
department's-
example for that. Like, you have somebody that's seasonal part-time at Old Orchard Park doing one job, and a full-time job comes open down at the Township Hall that they've never dealt with, let's say, money, that type of thing, and you move them into that office,
Right.
thinking that they've been a dedicated employee for 10 years.
Right.
You know, they come back every season, you know, you haven't had any problems with them.
Right.
Then you considered them to be the best candidate, and you hire them, and then find out that they can't count change, or they can't, you know, deal with the public one-on-one at the counter with an angry customer, that type of thing, then that's where your probationary period comes into effect.
What would you want the result of the probationary period to be? What if that person didn't work out? Would you want to let that person go?
Well, you wouldn't want to keep them in a position that over the probationary period, would you?
Right, but what I'm getting at is that seems like we're heading right down that same bad policy kind of a road, it seems like. We've got a person that's obviously delivered good work for 10 years.
Well, then you
They're
offer them
trying
their
to-
job back where they were working before.
Possibly,
Well,
I would have
think
liked that
that's-
answer better than the one you gave, but
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
I don't think that's comparing apples to apples, because you're talking about a seasonal employee. We're talking about a full-time, part-time employee that
Part-time.
works all year long at a given position. I can understand what your point, a seasonal employee, they have one job working at Old Orchard Park store or something. If they applied for a full-time job at something else in the township, we might not have a feel for what they would do. But when you have a full-time or a regular part-time employee that works year-round, we had that minimum of 950 hours a year they have to work. That seems to me a little different scenario than a part-time seasonal employee that we would hire.
I can think you could still end up in the same situation where a part-time employee who then transitions to a different position that's full-time and then come to find out that it's not a good fit. I don't think a 6-month probationary period for that kind of transition is unreasonable. But now regarding the vacation days transfers, then, you know, or personal day transfers, whatever, then, you know, that's another matter.
I think something else that we're not really getting into is just working for a different boss, if you will. You know, somebody might work for Al and do fine, and then come and work for John or Jamie, and
What are you trying to say?
I think that's a good point, Jim.
I see what you mean, Jim, but
I can see
I don't
that
need
too,
to go
actually.
any further with that.
You would agree, Jamie?
I would.
I guess I would be open to tabling this for the next, and we can work to be able to get a recommendation that you'd feel more comfortable with. I will point out that first sentence does mean something. If you can understand the previous policy, that the employee shall make the same hourly rate when transitioning from permanent part-time to full-time status. So, again, that is a
That's
drastic
a step.
improvement from the prior practice.
Yes.
So is there a recommendation or table the matter? What's the wish of the board?
I move that we table this for, how long would it take to come up with a reasonable?
Well, yeah, we could do that rather quickly. The next board meeting is the 10th of June, so
Yeah,
I'd
okay.
get something in
That's
front of
my
you for the
motion
10th of
then.
June.
support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine. Yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
No.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. POLC employee pay increase. I'm sorry, non-POLC employee pay increase.
All right, so this is a placeholder item. Obviously, the board on a previous action had approved the 3-year agreement for POLC, that it was both a 2% pay increase for 2019, 2020, and 21. This board action would apply to that same 2% increase for the non-PLC employees for the township.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the 2% non-POLC employee pay increase.
Support. Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine. Yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. 2% retroactive pay for non-POLC employees.
Again, this is in alignment with the previous board action for the POLC contract, that the same 2% retroactive pay be applied for the non-POLC employees, retroactive back to 1/1 of 2019.
Comments?
Yeah, if we gave retroactive pay to the police, why would we not do the same here? It would just create bad feeling if we did not. I mean, unnecessary bad feeling, I think. So, I'd like to make a motion that we do go ahead with this retroactive idea.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine. Yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Real estate listing of the Oscoda Community Center.
All right, so the township board has discussed the future of the Oscoda Community Center, both at regular township board meetings as well as the annual budget work sessions. Other than the concept of a millage dedicated to fund the operations of the ongoing building maintenance, the OCC Advisory Committee was not able to produce a plan that would increase OCC annual operating revenues enough to offset the annual operating expenditures. Your packet contains the draft of a letter to list the OCC with Real Estate 1 as an available township property.
Any comments?
Mr. Schaefer, how much were the operating expenses in the red in prior years, not this last year?
So to give you an example, in 2009, it was in the red $65,000 on an annual basis. And at this point, the planned subsidy from the general fund contribution to the Fund 508 Community Center Fund was planned for $92,000. So that subsidy has continued to increase. And obviously with a building that large, a lot of that is dedicated to utilities and the heat associated with operating that facility.
And as I was looking for the past, you just quoted with 92,000 last year's adjustment. Is that correct?
That is the planned one for 2019.
2019.
That has already went from the
Got it.
general fund to
Fair enough.
the 508.
So that is a current deficit. So good. So good. Yeah, and it's important to point this out because I've been a proponent of trying to save the OCC for some time. But this problem that we've all had on the board, this has been a problem that Mr. Byers characterized in meetings, and I think every one of us has discussed in great detail. I came about with the idea of doing the OCC subcommittee a few years ago, and I guess it's sad to hear that it's true we didn't really come up with a a monumental impact on the bottom line for revenue generation and trying to bridge the gap in the budget, but yeah, it's getting to be an arterial wound here. I think one of the other thoughts, and I think I'd like to just bring this up as an obvious elephant in the room. I think everyone has been quite emotional about the OCC for some time. And the question would be, okay, well, what do we have instead of an OCC at this point? And I think I'd like to originate to the public that we don't have another OCC yet, obviously, but there have been discussions for some time now where we're trying to figure out how we can offer an OCC and possibly a combined library maybe even, and another township hall somewhere, an expansion of, or newly developed another location. There are discussions going on, but we need to get our arms wrapped around the fiscal component of that and agree as a board where that's going to be located. So I just want to say that that's my opinion, since I've been kind of the recent spokesperson for the OCC.
And is it true, Dave, that the membership or use and general use has declined almost 40% in the last year?
The line item associated with admissions revenue is down to 39.6%, and that obviously some of the walk-in customers to the OCC have other options available to them, and so we are seeing the impact on the usage of the OCC as far as walk-in revenue generated.
Yep.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I move that we put the OCC up for sale. I think that's sufficient a motion.
What about the amount?
Right, we hadn't discussed that as a board yet here, have we?
My recommendation would be for $295,000.
I'm actually fine with that. 295,000 is fine in my book. That's my motion. 295.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
I see lots of pros and cons, but I'm going to vote yes on this.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion is passed. Under resolution and ordinances, resolution 2019-15 MDT grant for power plan.
All right, so resolution 2019-15 is for the board to approve the formal resolution associated with participating, the Michigan Township Participating Plan Risk Reduction Grant Program Support and Authorization. So we were able to apply for a $5,000 grant associated with the purchase of mobile data terminals, 6 mobile data terminals for the police department. The current quote associated with that is $44,290 to purchase and install and mount 6 MDTs in the police cruisers. And this resolution 2019-15 is the the board authorizing us to submit the $5,000 grant associated with this purchase.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution. Go ahead.
Adopt resolution 2019-15 as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Modine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Relinquishment of jurisdiction, resolution.
Okay. So this was provided an overview in the public hearing earlier this meeting. And so this resolution number associated with parcel number 063 009 300 001-00 is associated with having a public hearing on June 10th for the statutory obligation to follow the road relinquishment procedures. So this authorizes the obligation, and there will be a to schedule the relinquishment on the 10th of June.
Comments? Is there a motion? I make a motion, we approve resolution 2019-16.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Modine, yes, Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution of support for the Mishta project.
All right, so resolution number 2019-17 is a resolution of support for the Mishta Mod Housing Initiative Project. And so the application deadline to apply for this is June 3rd. And so we want to be able to show the support. Obviously, that is prior to the next meeting scheduled for June 10th. And what this does is allows the zoning administrator to work with AKT Peerless on this grant or on this opportunity to be able to participate in the Mishta Mod Housing application. And what this would do is start the process of determining how we can provide a model modular home on a township property to be able to attract interest and potentially sell more workforce housing units. Based on conversations with the real estate professionals and AKT Peerless as well as Mishta, we feel it's appropriate to move forward with this initiative, at least apply and see if we could be accepted into this program.
Comments?
If someone takes advantage of one of these modular homes as an individual or family, how would they be taking ownership of the home or leasing it?
Correct, taking ownership
So
of the home.
these are for individual families to own, okay.
And so the modular homes, I can attest to trying to house hunt in the area, try to provide options for 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. More options would be welcome to the community.
Certainly. The reason I ask is seems to me the most need for housing we have is transient type housing, people on short-term contracts, 1-year contracts. Would they be interested or able to purchase a home? Is this going to help with that need that we have is why I ask.
And so obviously that initial hurdle that doesn't reduce that initial hurdle to home purchasing. It's more options available to those who can purchase a home.
Any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to make aware that all these resolutions, even though it says resolution hereby authorized by the township supervisor and clerk to jointly sign, and there's only one name on all of these. The township supervisor's name is not apparent. The certification.
It's a page 1 of 2. It would be on the back page.
Be on the second page.
you're talking about that last clause, be it further resolved.
Right.
That's pertaining to, it says that the supervisor and township clerk jointly sign as it concerns any such documents referencing if this initiative agreement needed an agreement executed. Or like, it was recommended by the attorney to contain that language on all of our easements, or all of our resolutions for things like property transfers and.
Yeah, but I've been seeing, before, I'd seen double signatures. That's why I questioned it, John.
Sure. It's intended to reference documents outside this resolution, anything that accompanies the resolution.
That's not how it reads.
I can work to make it more clear, but that was the language I was given to insert, so,
Okay.
but I can work to
Check it
do what
out.
I can.
All right.
Make a motion, we approve resolution 2019-17.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Ordinance 165 amendments.
All right, so this has to do with ordinance 165. It is section 6.5 for guest house standards, and section 4.16 residential tourists, read by the Planning Commission at the February 4th, 2019 meeting and voted on unanimously on the March 4th, 2019 public hearing. These amended ordinance sections were sent to the county on March 29th, 2019, and an approval was received back from the county on April 17th, 2019. And so these changes to section 6.5 for guest house standards require township board approval.
Comments?
So number 4, where it says it's going from 17 feet to 20 feet, is there like people that have that already, and are they going to have to change that, or? Let's say that there's one over 24 feet. Do they have to, that there's a structure already that high? Is there anybody outside of that limit already of the 20 feet?
If they've been permitted for that structure in the past, then they are grandfathered.
Okay,
If they've not been permitted, then they're not grandfathered.
okay.
What if you had a house that had never been a guest house, but I'm thinking of the pack house, for instance, and somebody wanted to make a bed and breakfast out of the pack house. It's never been a guest house. I don't believe. It's always been private home or a restaurant. Would you say no to them? Because it certainly doesn't meet these requirements as far as setback or anything like that. How will we handle that?
This
Special use?
is relating to a guest house, which is an additional structure on a property secondary to a primary residence. So this is an additional structure.
Okay.
Part of the
Not a standalone.
Not a standalone, no.
B and B.
No.
Okay.
And part of the reason for the change is that there was wording in another section of the ordinance, which I believe was for, I can't remember, there's another type of additional structure that was actually at 20 feet. So we made this change so that they would conform.
Okay.
So it's, like Mr. Weed said, if a building had already been approved for a higher level, so actually what we're doing is we're increasing the height requirement from 17 feet to 20 feet. If there was something that was approved higher than 20 feet in the past, that's already set. So this is just increasing it that 3 feet.
This is off the mark a little bit, but not entirely. Has the Planning Commission ever looked at some of the tourist facilities that we have around here, either south of us, north of us, whatever, where the proprietor has seemingly purchased a travel home or a pull-behind fifth-wheel trailer and parks it there and rents it in addition to the cabins that are already there. But it gives them a little extra places to rent. Has it ever come up? I don't want to be too specific here, but I can think of one south of town, one north of town, on 23. So I don't know the ownership. I don't know how solid that is, but you see it parked next to it. And sometimes during the summer, there's a couple of cars there. Someone's renting it. And I don't know. Something to look at, maybe.
This might come into our vacation rental ordinance that we're working on for the township. That might be addressed as part of that ordinance.
All right. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Make the motion that we move ahead with ordinance 165 amendment.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Approval of 2 vehicles to auction at Bid Corp.
All right, so what you have listed there is a 1996 Chevrolet GMT and a 1997 Ford. Both of those would be placed on Bid Corp for a minimum bid of $500. This requires Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we go ahead and place the 2 vehicles in question on Bid Corp.
Support. Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Old Orchard Park approval of seasonal hires.
All right, so what you have there are the applicants associated with the seasonal hires. And again, these are in line with the Old Orchard Park operating plan that for 2019 that was submitted earlier this year. And so these are associated with the Old Orchard Park operations and maintenance.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the seasonal hires as presented.
These are recommended by Mr. Apsides?
Correct.
Okay.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Conditional approval of seasonal hires?
So between now and June 10th, the operations plan for Old Orchard Park, obviously, any of the staff positions that were to turn over between now and June 10th, we would need to immediately fill. We're ramping up with the staffing. The policy states that the township board should approve all hires. And so what I'm asking the board to be able to do is to approve the conditional hire in accordance with the 2019 Old Orchard Park operating plan. If we were to fall below those positions, to be able to hire between now and June 10th to meet the staffing minimums.
Comments?
I can verify that. They usually lose a few right at the very beginning and then are scrambling to look for people for the next holiday, so.
Well, I think that's reasonable because, quite frankly, I don't think any of the 7 of us are sitting in on the interviews or reviewing the applications. So, you know, I know we have to approve it, but we don't really know these. We're leaving it up to our Parks Director, his judgment as far as who he wants to hire. So I don't see where it's a problem for this board to pre-approve additional hirings using that same logic that we're gonna agree with when our Parks Director approves. So I would be in favor of approving that motion to hire seasonal employees that may be needed between now and June 10th.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire.
And I just want to echo, yeah, I'm fully in favor of just approving a number of employees for each seasonal department and leaving it at that, and leaving it to the discretion of the department heads.
All of them? Or just
Yeah,
UCC?
no, all of them. I'm just concerned in, you know, how many employees is the department hiring for budget purposes?
Right.
Other than that, like Mr. Palmer said, I've got nothing to add, in the interviewing and hiring. I have no value add there for me, so I'm just worried about, you know, budget, load on the budget.
Right, yeah, that's what I was thinking, was budget, so where is the budget, check completed or done? I guess, is it to come to you and make sure that before the hiring is completed?
That we are looking at where we are based on target.
Yeah.
Obviously, Old Orchard Park, say we're halfway through the year, we're not halfway through payroll, we're just kind of starting with that. So based on the historical practice of where we are in the year, we can compare that figure to the prior year to see where we are based on the month and the target that we should be through the budget.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
think Bill and Al do a really good job of keeping track of their seasonal people and their hours and what they have left to use for the years. And to be honest, they lose a lot of their summer help going back to college and that type of thing. And they're actually looking for people again to help finish out the year usually, so.
Roll call?
Mr. Gasky. Yes. Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Establishing the next 4 township work sessions associated with Michigan Launch Initiative.
All right, so you see 4 dates there, the 10th, the 13th, the 17th, and the 20th of June. All of those would be established for here at the Parks Library at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And as we obtain more clarification from the executive director of the Michigan Aeronautical Manufacturers Association, I will keep the board apprised. Unfortunately, we don't meet again until the 10th, and I want to be able to establish these dates so we can plan accordingly. If one were to be canceled or the other one formally accepted, we would then I would then notify the board.
So you're looking for 1 work session, not 4.
I'm looking for 4 work sessions on those dates at 2 o'clock. When I have dates, when I have the date firmed up, I would then,
You're looking for 1 work session. You're looking to hold 1 work session on one of those 4 days.
yes.
And 3 of them will just be tentative until they get canceled.
Yes, sir.
Any comments?
I'm not available the 17th.
I didn't even check them. I'm good to go. I'm good for all the dates, though.
I'll just try my best.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those is my birthday, and I would agree with that one as long as there's gonna be cupcakes and balloons.
I'll let Tammy know.
20th, we have our bike path meeting at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
But I've already seen the presentation, so that'd be fine with me. I could miss the presentation to this. The other dates are fine.
That's a good point. We may be holding a public hearing at that meeting regarding the foot site neighborhood. So the 20th may not be a good date either.
Okay.
There goes the cupcakes.
Yeah, so that's the date.
Oh, no.
It would still seem to me that setting it might still be of interest because they're so tentative in nature anyways. But just my thought.
If you can get it the 17th, I'll see what I can do.
When I know
Yeah.
when those are, I will, the day, I will let the board know.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we give Mr. Schaefer the latitude to track down a date with Gavin to do the presentation, except for the 20th. Or any day.
Support. 2 p.m. at the library, right?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Drop-off refuse program dates for Saturday, June 15th and September the 14th.
Right, so this is a very popular program, increasing participation year after year, and we are trying to establish those dates, both Saturdays, to be able to have the refuse drop-off program as a continuation from the previous year's practice.
Comments?
I just want to let the board know I put on the table for you a question that Mr. Palmer had on Friday. Kind of breaks down what we have paid over the past, so there is a little bit of fluctuation depending on if we have to have an extra rollaways and that thing. Just wanted to let you all know the prices that were varying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this is a valuable program. I think it helps to keep, maybe some of the blight out of the township and out of the national forest and that sort of thing. So I think this is something we should continue.
I agree.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we update the flyer as soon as possible and get notification out to the paper of the dates that we've established, June 15th and September 14th for the next drop-off permit, and let people know that those permits are available in the treasurer's office for $10 for each
Support.
one.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Chamber of Commerce's letter to request a Warrior Pavilion fee waiver.
All right, so the letter pertains to the fee waiver associated with a non-profit roundtable on Wednesday, October 9th, 2019. Chamber is seeking approval for the use of Warrior Pavilion as a venue for the event.
Comments?
I didn't actually see in there where they requested a fee waiver. It says authorized use of the pavilion.
Yep, it just says seeking approval for use.
Any other comments?
It doesn't actually ask for it. But it thanks us for the consideration.
I can try to obtain clarification from the chamber and bring it back for the 10th.
I would say we approve this, notify them that we've approved their use.
Yes,
If they have any further questions, they
That's
can.
fine.
I'll second that.
Exactly, yeah,
right, so
yeah, I
moved,
agree.
yeah.
Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Nordine, support by Mr. Palmer.
Walked right into that.
Are you sure they will get the nuance of that response?
I don't, the
think they
nuance is
expect-
intended, and if they don't, I'm okay with
We
it.
got 6 months. 6 months.
Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yep.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Request for Warrior Pavilion fee waiver for the MCOG.
All right. So the red team, the Regional Economic Development Team, is slated to meet on July 12th. That is a Friday. We would begin at 11 a.m. and wrap up around 2 p.m. MCOG serves 14 counties, and they are the clearinghouse for several economic development grants. And so having those regional economic development team members in our community is valuable and provides an economic development opportunity for the region.
Comments?
It's July 12th during the middle of the week.
Friday morning.
I move that we go ahead with this request for a fee waiver. A little publicity for our town, get some visitors, important ones.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion's passed. CVB Movies at the Pier.
All right, so this is in relation to the prior year requests. They are going, the CVB is planning to run 9 weeks on Wednesdays from July 3rd through Wednesday, August 28th. And those dates are detailed in there, and they want to be able to use and have the board approve the beach park use.
Comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, next item, treasurer's a seasonal employee.
As you guys are aware, Tina put her resignation in for my seasonal part-time person, and she got a full-time job, and so I'm really happy for her. But I needed to replace her. I've done a couple of different interviews with people, and Lois Sawilski was actually my deputy treasurer for a long time before John, and she retired, and she's bored and wants to come back to work. So her application is on the board table, and I need to have approval to hire a person now, so I was looking for the board's approval.
Comments?
What does that constitute for you, a seasonal employee?
Seasonal part-time actually for me is really a little bit different than Al's people or Bill's people, because mine is round, it's year-round, but then there's like blocks of time that they're not actually working. Like most of April, they don't work at all, and the end of March, they don't work, and then October, the whole month of October, they don't work, Because it's basically peak times in the summertime with taxes and Old Orchard Park and, yeah. And when the water bills go out and when they come in, and then they may be off for 2 weeks during the month, and then they work a little bit more hours here and there. Their hours vary from anywhere from 15 hours a week to 40 hours a week sometimes.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the treasurer's request for a seasonal employee.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. It's been brought to my attention that we need to address the payment of bills for June, for the May, considering that we are not having a meeting at the end of this month.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the treasurer's office to pay the bills, and they'll show up on the next report as prepaids.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. We're now on to our second public comment period. There's a 4-minute time limit. A card does not need to be filled out.
Mr. Supervisor,
Oh,
community newsletter.
yes, that's right. We do have the community newsletter. All right. Any questions regarding the community newsletter?
I think I know the answer, but the fire department millage for August 6th, that verbiage is from our lawyer, or? I think it's not going to serve us well if we're locked into this. We're talking about the fire department here, and it's going to be a renewal, but it sounds like it's, because the one before it is a new thing, millage for roads. But this reads, the Charter Township of Oscoda imposes an increase of up to 90.90 mils. That means 90 cents per thousand of taxable value in the tax limitation imposed on Article 9, blah, 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 levy for 6 years. It sounds to me like it's a brand new thing. Like you're gonna get, am I wrong? Am I missing something here?
No, this is a new fire millage that addresses the funding for both equipment and operations.
I see, it's different than just
The first one was equipment.
Okay.
This one applies to both aspects.
But for clarification, they won't overlap. As the one
Right.
goes away,
One
this
expires, the
is
next
intended
one
to, yeah.
Okay.
implements.
Okay. All right. I have another comment. This is the newsletter. Usually the newsletter is 2 pages. The second page, excuse me, microphone. The second page is the supervisor's corner, which is the whole page. It's not really a corner. But I mean, that's up to the supervisor. But Aaron, you know, you and I have had our ins and outs, and going back to February of 17. And from my point of view, just kind of getting over this now and thinking that we had a better relationship. But holy man, are there some things in here? I think your letter is a little more than self-serving, and some of the stuff, I'm talking about the second paragraph, talking about things that they've done, and he points out only in the last 2 years. That means his time in office. New ordinances are being written to ensure growth and development and secure our community for the future. The Downtown Development Authority has been dissolved and a new board is being created to develop a cohesive economic strategy for the entire township. Here's the key, not just select areas that have remained unchanged for years. That means the downtown. I mean, if you've lived in this town, new sidewalks, new lighting, plants and trees that was never there before. The reconstruction of the building that was originally intended to be a farmer's market or the artisan building. The lighthouse, so-called lighthouse that was there, you know, whoever did that, either it's the DDA or the township, but there's all kinds of changes in the downtown. We had a facade grant program where storefronts could be enhanced with money. You know, different things like that. So I have a problem with not just select areas that have remained unchanged for years. And then further on down, the last two, it hasn't been easy over the last 2 years to implement change, but things are changing, and talks about, you know, getting out of the rut. And at the very end, encouraging people to be involved. Don't let apathy continue. Don't accept mediocrity. Now, there are some members of this board, Jamie and Martin, and toward the end of the time before the 16 election, Tim and Bill, Steve in the audience gave us a couple of years of his time. I don't know about, you know, apathy. Don't accept mediocrity. If you'll let me, I have some things to give as examples that are way less time than your letter. Improvements at the Oscoda Beach Park, splash park, purchase of new land on the north end. Skateboard has been rehabbed with a retaining wall to keep out the sand and so forth. Improved formations for the kids. A pier, well, very controversial, but people have come to like it, especially the tourists. And this is a tourist town. Over $1 million pier that is featured on phone book covers and billboards all over the state, down by, you know, somebody likes it. And new street lights, as I mentioned earlier, wider sidewalks, curving sidewalk, decorative. Lake Street lighting and new sidewalks on Lake Street. Sale of the Oscoda Conference Center, which is the building next to Gilbert Drug. And we were able to get the same price that we paid for that. Plus the time, roughly 10 years that we owned it, we had 2 tenants in there to generate, you know, money for the township. That was all done prior to 2016. But we were able, even though there was a tremendous downturn in the economy and property values, home values, we got the same amount of money for that building as we paid for it 10 years earlier. Not too shabby. New veterans facilities out at the high, you know, there are a lot of people in this community that are veterans that really appreciate that. And that took quite a bit of red tape and battles to get that, but it's done, it's there. Acquisition of new fire vehicles without any tax increase, not as many as we've been able to do now, but we did get some new equipment taken out of the general fund, and refurbishing Warrior Pavilion, new deck, windows, refurbishing the community center, which we talked about tonight, new roof, new siding, improvements at Old Orchard. We if you've been out there, yurts that are for sale, cabins, a new covered picnic building. We have, prior to 2016, we paved anywhere from 25 to 30 streets in Oscoda Township, with special assessments and communication with people, 25 to 30 streets. Ambulance service that we're now unhappy with now, and we alluded to that earlier in the meeting. But we went down there and got it perked up for a while. Now, I will be the first to agree that it's slid downhill again and we have to keep after them. But there was a time where we went right after the ambulance situation in Oscoda Township and got some response to that. And it involved some battles with the county commission and the county administrator. And I think important is we had a good relationship with surrounding townships, the county itself, Osable Township. You know, we're really close, and I'm not sure we have that anymore. So these are all accomplishments that took place before the last 2 years. I wouldn't say this because it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. I didn't do it myself, but I happened to be the supervisor at the time for 8 years. And but I think this letter slams the previous administration really badly, unnecessary. I think you're stirring the pot here. I think if you want to talk about how things are going in the last 2 years and you've done this and you've done that, that's okay, but you don't have to do that at the expense of what went on before. Thank you.
Any comments? Thank you for your feedback, Mr. Byer.
You're entirely welcome.
Any comments regarding the newsletter? We will need to approve this being mailed out. So is there a motion?
I move we approve the newsletter.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
No.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. We also have on here under informational regarding the police chief recommendation for completion of probation. Are there any comments regarding that?
Yeah, good work.
Thanks.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move Patrolman Palmer to remove her from probationary status to active status, I guess.
It's Officer Hayes.
Oh, Hayes, I'm sorry. I closed it, I didn't see him. Mr. Hayes.
Is there support?
I'll support it.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gajewski. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, any other items? Now we move into public comment. Again, the card does not need to be filled out. Anyone may speak. There's a 4-minute time limit. Does anybody wish to speak?
My name is Kerry Osborne. I have the power sports business right next to Burger King there. You know, you talk about the township. I was up here 2 years ago, and I'm saying the same thing now that I said 2 years ago. I don't see the support for local businesses and small businesses Everybody wants a rocket program. They want the big businesses, but they're tripping over the little guys in the meantime. I got written a citation for having vehicles stored outside my shop with a blank ticket, which there's no code ordinance or anything. Most people get up and read their Bible every day. I got issued that ticket April 1st. April 2nd, I read the code 165 ordinance every day, looking for governing excerpts or anything that pertains to my business that would help me understand why I received a ticket. Because in the original special use permit, in our zoning administrator's handwriting, it says no outside storage. Any vehicle temporarily outside while being serviced shall have current registrations and plates. That is what I require. That is what I have now. Last year I had twice as many vehicles in the parking lot. I'm getting ready to go on my 3rd year. I'm pretty much kind of successful in promoting our township and the things that we have going on here. For 2 months, in January, I was issued a letter asking what I was going to do about it, and I've been down to the zoning office several times, and part of Officer Bridson and our zoning administrator's job is works with property owners and developers to explain applicable zoning regulations and review procedures so that properties are used and improved consistently. They're not doing that. That is not being done. I got written up. I needed an explanation for a zoning ordinance. I have not received it yet. I was told under the impression that it was a board member that had a complaint. I have no name, and I'm still waiting since April 1st to know who has the complaint filed against me for the vehicles sitting outside that are all temporarily outside while they're being serviced. I don't have a huge employee base to draw from. I've had employees there, they don't last. They walk off to somewhere else or wind up doing a business of their own in their own garage. I've taken the steps to go through the things. I had no idea I needed a reoccupancy permit to enter the building and start a business. I was just there. However, a previous code enforcement officer had sent me a message on Facebook saying I needed one. So I asked for one, and I got one. And that one, they wanted me to, I went to court, and it seems that the township attorney has already deemed that the judge is going to interpret this as the township's favor and in favor of the ticket without any discussion whatsoever. So here's what I did. I spent another $160 to get a special use permit. And that special use permit request temporary outside storage for vehicles while they're being serviced, dropped off, or awaiting pickup, which seems redundant from what I've already got for a special use permit. I just think I don't see the support. I don't see the encouragement. It could have been talked out before I got a letter. We pay for the gas for those people to run, the enforcement officers to run up and down the highway, to pull in my driveway, shake hands and make acquaintance and ask me what's going on. I took 48 repair orders down to her office, and she never looked at one of them because she was bound determined that I was storing vehicles there because they'd been there for an extended period of time. That's not a zoning definition. That's all I ask for. If it's a week, 2 months, 3 months, I'll adhere to it. But it's very vague in the 165. And with my time limit being up, there's a lot more in there that...
Stay there, please. Continue.
There's a lot more in the zoning code. I am a...
Is this?
I'm going to finish your sentence. Just finish your sentence, please.
Is the board good with that? An extension of the time?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the permit I applied for was for servicing vehicles. What I was written up for was being an RV vehicle storage facility. That's not what I am. That's not what I want to apply for. I don't want anything to do with storage. That requires a fence and other ordinance requirements. I don't have time to do that. I don't have the time to move vehicles around a fence. I just want to operate a business, service the community, and let the people coming up on the weekends have a place where they can get things serviced.
My question for you is, you mentioned someone told you that someone on this board had an issue with your
zoning
premises,
administrator told me
and
that
who
I-
was that?
If I knew, I would tell
No,
you.
who
I would-
was it that told you?
The zoning administrator.
Okay,
Lorna.
well, I want to say that that upsets me. There is no reason why anyone on this board has any authority to unilaterally dictate zoning or your receipt of a ticket.
She
So
did
I
not-
want to tell you, I'm very upset if that is true.
She did not say which board.
I understand. It doesn't matter. Because
And
an
I've asked
individual
twice.
member of a board doesn't have that authority. And so that is my support for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
No,
No, not for the.
not for this one, no. Good.
Hello, Steve Worcesterbarth, 7906 Cedar Lake Road. I'm actually here in support of Kerry. Kerry, I've got to know over the last couple of years. He's actually invested in the community. I don't know if you drive along F41 between Burger King and Cedar Lake Road, but there's 4 empty buildings. He's purchased a building, he's operating it legally, and honestly, I was a little upset when he told me the situation a couple of weeks ago, that he was written a blank ticket with no explanation. That's unacceptable. So, Mr. Palmer, and I have to ask you because my wife is now on the planning commission, so I don't want it to seem as any favoritism at all, but seeing you're the trustee representative on the planning commission, I think there's an issue with the ordinance being very vague. And I don't think it addresses a business like Kerry's. You know, personally, I've had equipment in there for the last 2.5 years. I've sent many friends to him. And just this winter, I had a snowmobile go down. It took us 2 weeks to get parts. It took us 2 weeks to find a machine shop around here because nobody's doing this anymore. And it was really 6 weeks before we were able to get it back. It's just part of time. He's got some things in there today that just getting replacement engines that are not in stock. He could have a piece of equipment for 2 or 3 months. It's the recreational business. And when he gets older, things take a little longer. I see him adhering to everything in his lot has a registration. That's the only thing that should be required in a service facility. He puts as much inside as he can possibly do, but I like seeing the investment. He's not doing it out of his garage. He's had 2 employees that have worked for him that have left to go operate out of their garage. So I'd like to see the board support this, and I think there's some language in the planning or in the code that needs to be changed to support his type of business. Because honestly, he's the only one in town that has the recreational besides, Tim down in Oscoda. So I'd appreciate it if you could look into that.
You know, we have a subcommittee of the Planning Commission, and we've been working for the last 2 years revising parts of the ordinance. As you noticed tonight, there were a couple of changes in the ordinance that we approved tonight with heights and some other things. Certainly be willing to look at that section of the ordinance. Sounds to me like there is some vagary there on determining the amount of time that, because I understand a service business, you don't have control over how long it takes to get parts to service a machine, and you have to put it outside as opposed to keeping it in the building for all that time. Certainly be happy to take a look at that part of the ordinance to see if we can't make some changes to those timelines. As long as you're not operating a storage facility, then for a service business, we can certainly take a look at that.
And one other thing,
Happy
there's
to
one
do
thing
that.
that's out of his control. He's made some comments to me, but he's had some issues getting paid by people doing work. So his only thing is to hold on to items until they get paid.
Sure.
It shouldn't be reflective on the way that he runs his business. It's just simply trying to get paid. And I do have one other subject that's off. I wonder if I can take an extra minute or two. Is that okay?
What's your topic?
As my wife and I believe in this community, we're investing in this community. So we're finishing building our new home out on Cedar Lake. And with that, we've come across a few legal issues. There's some plat issues, let's say, with St. George's Point that go back 20 years. Fortunately, Mr. Aldrich is working with us and the homeowners there to get this cleaned up. However, there's one issue. I can't find any any documentation on. The St. George's Point was written as a private community condominium complex, site condominium, private road, private utilities. I'm looking for documents that shows the water, there's fire hydrants and a water pipe there. It's been being maintained by the township. In fact, they just dug up the road to fix something, but I can't find anything that's been turned over to the township. None of the owners seem to know. Mr. Aldridge doesn't really seem to know. But right now, legally, it's listed as private utilities, and we're getting ready to do some tap fees. So my question is, if it's private, we shouldn't be charged the entire tap fee if we're maintaining, that basically quarter mile of main. Or we'd like to turn it over to the township legally as we're finishing up this Fourth Amendment. So I'd like Mr. Schaefer, with the board's approval, just to look into that to see how that whole arrangement is done. And I can tell you, just legally since 2003, it's quite a mess with just getting the plat corrected to what the tax parcels are. It will be corrected by the end of this month with the county. And with that, we're going to do some further investment. Mr. Randy Rourke, his wife, and my wife have in the process of acquiring all the rest of the lots at St. George's Point that are for sale, and we're going to start putting spec homes in. So our hope is to finish that community in the next couple of years, starting with some new homes in the ground August, September. So just want to say we're here to stay, and we just want to see some new investment going. So with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Hi, Kathy
Um,
Oosterbarth.
Hold on, stand by. I make a motion that the board extend the meeting up until 9, I better make it 10 p.m.
I'm not going to be that long, I promise.
Nothing personal, Kathy.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Nordine. Roll call?
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Please continue.
Okay, Kathy Woosworth, 7906 Cedar Lake Road. I'm actually here on behalf of some community members that were not able to be here, and I want to read something from them. It's actually Andy Laporte, and he said, "We township residents acquired the OCC for $1 over 20 years ago from the government that poisoned our land. Now, if it doesn't sell, there's no guarantee that it will be open to the public for any recreational purpose. They claim membership and walk-in revenue was down nearly 40% the past years based on BS, I believe. They've taken write-offs year after year in a building they valued at nearly $1 million, and now they want to list it for $295,000 based on one man's recommendation. He thinks this is a sham. Why won't they look at a millage? This is what they claimed would tell us something. He has nothing to hide, and he said that I could quote him, and it makes him disgusted with their effort. Too many of us have brought too much to this community." So I wanted to I did want to communicate that because this was put in the agenda, in a letter, a very well-written real estate, I think, opportunity. But it was last minute that, I just discovered this afternoon when I was reading through the items. So, I think the residents of Oscoda did not know that this decision was going to be made tonight. And, I think it's really important that we know how they feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, floor is now closed to public comment. We're now into board comments. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, the item was regarding the FCC, Kathy, was not just last minute. It was in the same board packet that we all got. And we as a board have been looking at what price should be put on it. what things were, what comparables were, and we were having discussions. So I think it's fair that there's been some work done on this. It is not a sham, and the percentages that we quoted here tonight have been discussed also leading up to this. You know, it's, as I said before, before the vote was being taken, it's a passionate topic for this community. I don't deny that it is passionate. I don't deny that it will continue to be passionate, and I don't mean to try to take it away from anybody who wants to maintain that passion. The problem here is fiscal responsibility, and writing off isn't really a way of, it's sort of a way of just sort of playing with funny money here. We've had that building for a long time. It's not like we're writing anything off that's significant or that's going to suddenly make it a profitable venture. There have been many attempts to try to make this thing go right. From Mr. Byers characterized it numerous times. We've characterized it numerous times in numerous past meetings. Yeah, but this is not a last-minute ambush. It's not. It wasn't something we just put on the agenda tonight. It's something we're trying to figure out what we were going to do with, and you know, this community has to start operating more fiscally responsible. And I think this is an unfortunate incident that we're now into $92,000 of subsidy. I could put that $92,000 to much better work here in this community with a declining enrollment. That's it. Thank you.
The community center has virtually always run in the red, and previous years it was what, 65, 67, 69 in the red. Now it's up to 92.
92.
It's getting worse, and Kathy, Andy's letter indicated that the 40% reduction in use is BS. Is that what? And he knows this for a fact? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Andy's been a little intense in the past. I remember him sitting about where you are and saying that your efforts to keep it open is just smoke and mirrors. As hard as we were trying. But
Right. Yeah.
he's got strong opinions. So.
Any other comments?
Well, I would just say to the residents of Oscoda Township, I think it's important to have a community center. If you remember, when I first got on the board, I was pushing to, kind of trying to find a way to keep the community center open year-round. We were able to extend the season by about a month, which seemed to satisfy a lot of people that were interested in use of the community center for a longer period. But I think we have a vision for the township for the future. We're working on a number of things that our new superintendent is very intent on accomplishing through RRC and other programs that we're trying to implement. One of those visions is to build a new community center in combination with a new township hall, senior center, and library, along with the police and fire. And I think if people would look for the long-range plan of what we're talking about, it makes sense to me now that we need to sell the community center, take that money, set it aside to use for our new community center, and build a community center that's effective and one that's the size that we really need. The building that we call a community center now, is not really a community center the way it should be designed for this community. It's way larger than we need. God knows it's old and is going to need some major repairs and a good deal of money put into it if we were to keep it much longer. So I think putting on the market, seeing if we can find a customer to, it's in industrial, so it would be a business probably that would buy that, put that on the tax rolls, and look at our long-term plan for the township. And I think if people would understand that, we're not just doing away with the community center. We're looking down the road for the future to have a better plan for that. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll weigh in as well. I recognize that after the vote, I probably should have shared this before the vote, just so that my reasoning was clear to the community, who obviously cares about the community center. But for me, what's changed in this whole scenario? I mean, we've all known that it's struggled financially, the community center, for a while now. The concept of providing a replacement service that's adequate and similar and definitely more efficient is what is appealing to me. So and when I say replace, I don't maybe mean the same quantity. I don't, maybe it won't have 2 gyms and 3 racquetball courts and everything. But I hope we'll have a chance to tailor it to suit the community's needs. I hope everyone who has passion for the community center will hope to, let them have their say in that, so that it fits our community, and that it's sustainable, and that it is efficient and turns into a similar product to replace with, but much more efficient, and is a better overall value to the township. I hoped we had a more substantial way to communicate our vision than we do at this time. Timing hasn't really allowed for that. That's not the way it's come down. But hopefully that'll be coming here shortly, so that the public can understand what we hope to replace it with. And I think this board and the ones that come after us have to commit to actually bringing that to reality, and not just letting it become a plan that fades away over time. But I think good can come of this, and obviously it's an emotional topic, but it's a tough position to be in, at least for me, to try and look past the emotion and look at it analytically. So those are my thoughts.
Any other comments?
I just want to thank the advisory committees and the subcommittees for the OCC over the many, many years. There was one entity when we first took over the community center back after the base closed that did try to make a go of it, on their own, and that ended up coming back to the township again. But there was always lots of efforts, and everybody was very emotional about it, and it's very sad to see it go at this point. But like everybody else here on the board so far has said, that we do have a plan, and hopefully we can get to that end zone.
Anything else? All right, I want to thank the Oscoda Sabo Historical Society for having your event on May 5th. It was wonderful. Great venue at the Warrior Pavilion, too. It's always a beautiful view over the lake. So I hope it was a good success for you. Regarding the Oscoda Community Center, since I first got on the board, this has been a point of contention for that whole time. Since for how long you've been on the board, it's been a problem. We have documents from 10 years ago that shows that they were trying to make this community center financially viable the whole time, and it's not. My first obligation as an elected official is to the financial viability of the township. That's by state law. And $92,000 a year and ever increasing each year is not financial responsibility. What the community needs to contend with here, and I know they don't like it when I come off that direct, but this is who I am, is that you have to discern the difference between the ideology of a community center and the reality of the community center. The ideology of it is that it's great to have a community center. It serves the public. People can come there and they can do things. The reality of it is this is hundreds of thousands of dollars over a span of years that will be put into a facility that really only serves less than 200 people. That's not representative of our community of 7,000 people. That facility is the size of a community for 40,000 people, not for 7,000. You can estimate that at the max, you're going to get 3.5% membership rate at a community center. So when you do the numbers, we have a little less than, I think, 3% attending that facility. And every attempt made, every committee that's been formed, dissolved, reformed, everybody who's tried to put effort into making this viable, it has shown time and time again that it's not working. So are we jumping over quarters to save dimes? Are we trying to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars into an ideology? Or do we need to start taking our finances and let go of the past? Just like I put in the newsletter, we must keep ourselves relevant. Sometimes that means letting go of the past, changing the course, and moving towards the future. Because while we have a concept of how America was formed in the 1700s, things have changed over that time, for the good or worse, whatever it is, it's changed. People's lifestyles have changed. It's time for us to move to a different set. A smaller community center that we can build in the future, that's a good plan. A giant community center that costs us tons of money that can be used to help improve our township over the years to come, that makes better sense. Anybody else have anything? All right, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thanks for coming out.